All right, everybody, this is In Liberty and Health. I got a very, very special guest with me today, someone I've been looking forward to speaking to for quite a while now, Mr. Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. Always good to meet new people. So I'm sure we're gonna have a great convo. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, of course. Well, I wasn't gonna ask you it, but I'm gonna ask you it anyways. Are you ready to spit that hot Liberty fire and lift some heavy shit?
In the great lineage of Dave Smith, I will do my best to bring the fire to this topic. Yes.
Dude, every single show I hear you on. I wanted to watch you on Timcast, but I just didn't get around to it yet. But on your own podcast and every single other podcast I've seen you on, you've always done a killer job with it. On the way home, I
Well,
was listening
thank
to
you.
you on Lines of Liberty. So hell yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's on Timcast. I made the mistake of re-listening to the Creature from Jekyll Island on audio podcast because they flew me from San Diego to DC to go, live in studio.
Mhm.
So I had like 6 hours to kill. So I listened to the first couple chapters of that book, and I walked in there and like I couldn't help myself. Every single topic they brought up, I pivoted to the Federal Reserve. I was relentless.
Well, you know what? I can't fault you for that, though. I'm gonna watch it tomorrow morning, I promise. But it really is the fault of everything that's going on now. Because if there was no Federal Reserve, they couldn't monetize the debts because there's no way in hell
Exactly.
you could go to the populace and tell them, look, we're gonna have to steal exorbitant amounts of money off of you to fund all this crazy shit we want to do, right? Last year, 2020, if you looked at Rand Paul's Festivus report, $10 million for pop bottles that were supposed to be COVID test tubes. Do you
Oh,
think
sure.
the average taxpayer would want to pay for that shit?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's certainly a problem that it's wasteful spending. But the truth is, you're right, and the reason that I pivot from everything back to the Federal Reserve is because without the capacity to print and borrow infinitely, they couldn't have locked down the economy. We would have had
Nope.
just an absolute catastrophe. It would have been an immediate worldwide depression to even try it. But they have central banks across the planet that
Mhm.
allowed them to paper over that crater that they created, and now we're paying for it via inflation as opposed to what we should have paid for it was immense pain right
Sure.
away. And had we had that immense pain, it couldn't have persisted for 2 years. And this is why, even though it sounds very, I don't know, archaic and I don't know,
Bearish.
hoity-toity to
Yeah.
to pivot everything to the Federal Reserve, but it's the truth. Like that is the root of basically all evil in this country. So I had to bring it up a lot, and I don't know if I'll get invited on Timcast again because I did it, but we'll see.
Nah, dude, I'm sure you will. And even if you don't, you got your own platform and you go on plenty of other platforms that
True.
are
Yeah.
ripe for the messaging. You know what? Since we're kind of here, let me pull up we'll do a little screen share here. I want to share something. All right, perfect. It went right to it. Uh, Let me know if
Oh.
you can hear this. You know what I'm going to play, right?
Oh yeah. Of course, my boy Reed tweeted it out. I know it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tweeted it out too. So let's just listen to this real quick for anybody that didn't catch it. Um, can you hear that?
No.
Okay, I don't know. All right. Well, you know what? We'll skip over it. Oh man, what a flop. I'm so sorry
Well,
about that.
if you go back to the screen share and then when it comes up, it gives you an option to hit share with audio. I think you have to select that.
Advanced sharing options. Host all participants. Oh my God. On my own show here I am flopping.
It's okay.
Uh
It happens to everybody. It's not very easy.
oh my God. Share sound. There we go. All right, let's try this again.
We saved tens of millions of lives worldwide. We
Is that good?
Yep.
together,
Cool.
all of us, not me, we got a vaccine done, 3 vaccines done, and tremendous therapeutics like Regeneron and other things that have saved a lot of lives. We got a vaccine done in less than 9 months that was supposed to take from 5 to 12 years. Because of that vaccine, millions and millions of people. I think this would have been the Spanish flu of 1917, where up to 100 million people died. This was going to ravage the country far beyond what it is right now. Take credit for it. Take credit for it. What we've done is historic. Don't let them take it away. Don't take it away from ourselves. You're playing right into their hands when you sort of like, oh, the vaccine. If you don't want to take it, you shouldn't be forced to take it. No mandates, but take credit because we saved tens of millions of lives. Take credit. Don't let them take that away from you.
Okay, so the president made.
All right, I can't listen to it anymore. It's
I think we
fucking
get the point.
horrible. Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
it's atrocious.
and to continue on that, then I want to hear your thoughts on this. You could see this, right?
Yep.
All right, I just want to make sure we're all good. We'll read from this real quick. Our vaccines work against Omicron, especially for people who get booster shots when they're eligible. If you're vaccinated, you could test positive, but if you do get COVID, your case will likely be asymptomatic or mild. We're intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing, and we will get through this. For the line that everybody shared, for the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. Dude.
It's a threat. I mean, I don't know how to read it as anything other than a threat. And it's so detached from the science too, especially given the amount of breakthrough cases that we're experiencing or witnessing. It's like breakthrough cases. I don't even like using that terminology. It's like, okay, if it's a breakthrough case, it didn't work. It didn't work for those people. So at some point, and I think that I saw someone tweet it out today. I still haven't verified it yet, but his diagnosis was that he believes that there are more breakthrough cases than there are cases amongst the unvaccinated. And given how many people have been vaccinated, that could be true. And I think, I mean, are we going to be on YouTube? I don't want to get your channel nuked.
No, dude, no, go ahead. Even if it does,
Okay.
It does.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, from my read of everything, just being perfectly honest, I don't think that the vaccine really works. I don't. I think it has very minimal short-term added protection, but it's also paired with a very significant increase in susceptibility in the very near term. Because in the 2 weeks post-vaccination, your immune system actually depletes and you become more prone to catching COVID. I had a girlfriend of mine that got it right after she got the vaccine. And she was like one of those people that kind of hesitantly got it, wasn't really on board, but was like, well, I want to be around my family for the holidays and shit. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Boom. 3 days later, after she gets it, she gets COVID. And there's stories like this are abundant. I mean, they're all over the place. And the fact that they're mandating it and that they're banning us from every platform, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere else, if we bring it up, is, to me, it's further evidence that there's something extraordinarily nefarious about all this. Because if your purpose is health and safety and trying to rebuild trust in the medical community, the experts, what are you doing? I mean, you're absolutely demolishing it for anyone with even a semblance of rational capacity to think. And fortunately, we still have a decent amount of people in this country that can think rationally, and they're starting to see through the charade, and I'm grateful for it. It fucking takes way too long, but I think that we're starting to have more and more people, especially as it goes to 3, 4, 5 shots to get quote unquote full vaccination status. It's all just so transparently tyrannical, fraudulent, unscientific. I mean, I'm exhausted even thinking about it.
Yeah, dude, and it is very exhausting to think about. I have a podcast kind of saved in the bank that I record by myself, but if you look at the studies on this stuff, basically COVID replicates within your fat cells, right? And what happened within the last year? Childhood obesity went up by like 25%. Everybody on average, I think, gained 20 pounds in the United States. Now, me, I got leaner. I got in better shape over the last 2 years. Thank you. And
I put on 5 pounds since I got a girlfriend, but she's just such a good cook,
Nah, well, you know what? Maybe that's a benefit that my fiance doesn't cook and I do all the cooking. and I'm like okay at it. I could smoke and grill stuff, but like when it comes to the sweet junk, thankfully I'm not good at that shit, and I'm actually pretty good at saying no. I'm not going to eat a whole tub of ice cream, but so basically, your fat cells serve as a reservoir for COVID, and there was an article going around that everybody was sharing about this. So basically, when you're more obese, and let me preface this by saying I'm not fat shaming people. If you're obese, you're not a bad person. You can change. I'm putting out information there. So
you might be a bad person, but it doesn't make you one.
Right. Well, yeah, the caveat being, if you're obese, I want to do everything I can to help you if you want to be helped. If you don't want to be helped, that's fine. But the other side of this is that you need to accept that you are putting yourself at greater risk of COVID greater mortality outcome. It's just not good. But if that's the way you want to live, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But in the mainstream news, you never heard a word about this. That obese people spread disease more, they spread more virulent disease, and they have worse cases of COVID. And their COVID typically does, wallops them. It really fucks them up. So, my fiance and I are both relatively healthy. We had COVID back in late March, early April. Dude, it was like a breeze. It wasn't a big deal at all. I felt like crap
Doesn't
for a couple
surprise me
days.
at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
felt like crap for a couple days, and all of a sudden I lost my taste and smell, and I was back to normal. That was it. But kind of my purpose of this large tirade here is that I think there's a loss of trust in the media. I mean, it's completely obvious. And as much as I despise Trump, I think he should be thrown in a cage for the rest of his life and the key thrown out. He did do a good job of making people lose faith in the media. So my whole question to you, and where I want to pivot from this, is that you heard some people booing Trump in that video, and he got booed at a rally in Alabama. The Democrats are just horrible. There's no redeeming qualities there. I mean, you can give Joe Biden credit for ending the war in Afghanistan, but most people don't see that as a good thing anymore because it was so botched. 2022, 2024, the message of liberty, I think, is going to be huge. I think there's a huge appetite for it if we can just, get the right people out there. And I know that's kind of the conservative excuse for government, but I really think it's different. And I think these next 2 to 3 years are going to be huge in the message of liberty. Do you feel the same way? And, what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, and I have my own bias, which I have to disclose up front, is that I started my show, 18 months ago, and it's exploded in popularity. And I've had a lot of people give me, words of affirmation and praise. And so I'm biased because I have had, there's obviously an appetite for someone who's willing to speak boldly and honestly and talk all about liberty 24/7. So that makes me feel as if maybe there's more of an appetite for it than there might actually be. So let me just start by saying
Self-selection.
Yeah, exactly. All that being said, though, I think that the fact that my show was so successful so quickly shows that there is a real market demand, even though it's a small one. I mean, I'm not huge or anything, but it definitely shows that, especially amongst the Libertarian Party people, they failed. They failed in their messaging. They didn't come out boldly against lockdowns or anything, basically, the entire first year of the COVID hysteria. And because of that, it left a void for people like me. And anytime you see a void, that means that there's a reason that, people have failed in doing their job, and their job as messengers for liberty, the Libertarian Party. That should be first and foremost, that you should be absolutely on the front lines of all of this. And I'm grateful to see people like Angela McArdle and Spike Cohen and Dave Smith and all these people that are coming to the top of the whatever this new iteration of the Libertarian Party is. Now, all of that being said, I'm not hopeful that Dave Smith's going to be president in 2024. I love the guy. I think the world of him. I think if he were to be put on the debate stage against Joe Biden and Trump or whoever, we might actually have a chance. It's not going to happen. They're not going to allow him to do that. So the best we can hope for is to have a really bold, courageous, intelligent, persuasive messenger. Dave checks all of those boxes, go on the biggest alternative platforms, which are now as big as most mainstream news, at least
Or
when it
bigger.
comes to, and I was saying cumulatively, cumulatively, they're bigger, or very comparable. Joe Rogan Experience versus like every nightly news show combined is pretty comparable. So it's I'm very hopeful that because there is such a terrible lack of courage amongst modern American politicians that it will allow for very fringe people to get a huge microphone and have a lot of people have their ears perk up, because there are so many people in this country that feel unrepresented by both parties, and they feel like no one has really fought for them when it came to their liberty over the past 2 years. And they're right. They're fucking right. No one fought for them. No one with any power fought for them, at least. And that includes Donald Trump. And let me give a quick destruction of him. His ego prevents him from saying the right thing. He knows that the vaccines are tremendously unpopular amongst his base, but because he fast-tracked it with Operation Warp Speed, he has to stand on the vaccine and claim responsibility for it and claim how good it is and how many lives it saved, because he feels as if he deserves credit for it. So the fact that his base hates it, he has to try and pivot it because he has to defend his ego, because he can't admit any mistakes. And the mistake was not the vaccine and not fast tracking it. I'm totally fine with that. I don't even want the FDA to be involved in approving these things. But his mistake was that he basically he allowed Fauci and the lockdown zealots to fucking strip us of all of our liberty for a year and a half, and he presided over the first half of it. So fuck him forever. And if he expects anyone that values liberty to support him moving forward, he's out of his mind. Like, and I understand he's far better than Biden. So like, don't get it twisted. He's way better than Biden. Will I cast a vote for him? Abso-fucking-lutely not. Never. If you lock me in my house or permit someone to lock me in my house and then put the guy who propagandized an entire nation on front stage, front and center for an entire summer during the early pandemic, every single day that piece of shit was up there with Trump, patting him on the back, basically greenlighting everything he had to say.
Call me Tony. He said, "Call me Tony."
Yeah, there you go.
Right,
exactly.
dude.
So fuck them all, and fuck him particularly, because he gets to have it both ways. He gets to pretend as if, oh, Fauci's such a tyrant. You could have fired his ass. You could have fired his ass the day before you left. He never did. He never pushed for it. He never moved towards it. And now his defense of it is, oh, but had I done that, then the left would have blamed me. They were going to blame you anyways, you absolute moron. And we all know that. And I think he knows it. So I just think it's a lie at that point. He didn't want to fire him because for whatever reason, he felt like this was the path. He had been propagandized. That's my estimation of it. A lot of people think, oh, he's an operator and that he's the same as Joe Biden, all these people. I don't actually think that. I think he is an outsider that was manipulated because he's not that bright. And I know that sounds mean, but that's my opinion. So, we'll see. I think in the future, we'll find out if he runs again and he actually fixes some of the things that he really fucked up on. I'll eat my words. But as of now, I don't want to see him run again. I think we need new blood and we need people that actually value liberty, because that's what we desperately need.
Well, I've heard Dave talk about it a lot, and I think he was right that the populist right and Trump kind of sucked all the air out of the room when it came to the liberty movement, because you had the great Ron Paul for 2008, 2012, and all these people were amped up. And, I'm not going to bash Ron Paul here, but, what did he say when people asked him, what should we do? He said, well, do whatever you want. So he was great at getting everybody amped up, but there was no direction. Well, Trump came along and said, look, these people are screwing you, and I'm going to drain the swamp, and I'm going to blame Mexico, and I'm going to blame China, and I'm going to make America great again. He gave people something to rally behind. But the thing that these guys had in common, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast and really start bringing more culture to libertarianism, is because they made it fun to be in politics. When you go to a Trump rally, you see, pictures of Trump rallies, there's 50,000 people there. They're having a fucking blast. You hear these stories about the Ron Paul revolution where people are going around towns and, painting the town Ron or whatever. Like, dude, that's a beautiful thing. And people love that. This is what people want. People want a revolution. And that's what those two represented. And once again, if we can do that, then I think we can at least get closer to winning or even win by capturing the culture. And this is what the political left has been so good at. They permeated, music, Hollywood, you name it. They permeated it, they took it over, and then the culture went, and so did the politics. That's what we need to do, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the libertarian world. And I think you and the Power Hour,
Tower Gang,
Tower Gang, you guys are doing a great job of that. And I think if we keep just pushing it and keep getting this message out, like I said, I think there's huge appetite for it, and I think we can wake a lot of people up. And I think that people on a local level will start doing great things.
There's no doubt you're right. I mean, this is the whole reason I do Tower Gang. My show, Liberty Lockdown, is significantly bigger than Tower Gang, but I do Tower Gang because it appeals to a totally different audience. I want it to be fun. Liberty Lockdown is my outlet for venting violently, verbally violently. Whereas Tower Gang is like, we're going to talk shit and we're going to have fun with the guys and we're going to make inappropriate jokes and we're just going to be what used to be, slightly edgy humor, which is now completely disallowed and bannable. And that's, there's a market demand for that. And I think that when you get to see what freedom actually looks like, freedom is telling bad jokes. I mean, that is freedom. And it's now basically taboo to do so. And I personally, as a fan of comedy, I'm not a comedian, but I just love comedy, and I love to joke, and I love to say terrible shit, and I love to push the envelope. So I just think that, like, it was such a natural fit for me when I found these guys. They're all so autistic and so funny, and I was like, this is perfect. And they're smart too. I mean, they get libertarianism, and they're good people. And it's tragic because I don't know if you followed any of the drama lately, but we're getting accused of all sorts of terrible things, doxing people and doing all sorts of shit that I know for a fact none of us had any part in. But it's, this is what comes with the territory. You start to make inappropriate jokes, and all of a sudden people are out to get you, even in the liberty sphere. It's really sad, but I don't care. Like, the good thing about being in the position I am, financially free and essentially able to retire in my late 30s, I was like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And what I want is to tell the truth and to have fun. Like, those are the two things. So Liberty Lockdown, I tell the truth. Tower Gang, I have fun. And I'll be damned if anybody's going to stop me. They could ban me, they can report me, they can do whatever they want, but we'll find ways to stay alive. And I think that's what we need. We need more shows like yours as well. I mean, the culture is tremendously important. Ultimately, it's going to require a complete revolution, like you said, and it's going to require us to take over academia. Public schooling needs to be abolished. Like, everything has to start basically from ground zero all the way back up. But in the meantime, I'm going to do what I can to reach the remnant and let them know that they have a home. You are not this social pariah. You have the right and the ability to laugh at shit and to think critically and to tell the truth. And if I get DMs from people all the time, both thanking me for giving them the courage to do so, but also saying, I can't do what you're doing, and I appreciate that you're doing it. I go to work every day and I have to bite my tongue, and I hate that. And, like, I feel for them, but simultaneously, like, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I'm trying to inspire people to go do the same thing. Like, I want people to go and tell the truth in their real life to their family, their friends, their employers. It's like, it's not enough just to think these things. Like, when you have a silent, which I believe in my soul is a silent majority, the only reason it's silent is because it lacks courage. Like, you got to tell the truth, and you got to do so boldly. And I'm praying that, as more outlets like mine and yours start to take hold, we can inspire more people to be like, okay, maybe it's not so dangerous to tell the truth. Time will tell on that one, though.
Absolutely. And, I love going down this path of optimism, because you hear so many people saying, oh, black pill, black pill, black pill. Look, they locked us in our house. Oh, my God. We're all going to die from COVID. Like, we're getting it from all ends. But I can't share that same sentiment. I just don't feel it. And look, if you want to dwell on that, you can do that. But, like, hell's a pretty deep hole, and you can dig pretty far down, and it's easier to make it worse, but to make it better takes a lot of effort. But you know what? We don't know how good things can get if we just keep fucking beating the drums for liberty, if we keep beating the drums for freedom, if we keep spreading this message and waking people up. And I'm seeing it even through my own show, just starting out, not even 2 months ago. These health people are the health wellness space is very welcoming of this message. And they're kind of like, look, I'm happy I got to go on your show and talk about this stuff. And they don't stop talking. And it's not that I would never tell them shut up. It's like, dude, keep going. People want to hear this stuff. People in your space, they probably feel like the way you're saying, hey, I just can't say anything. Well, look, the guys that you look up to feel the same way as you do. So you need to go out and, have the same courage that they do. You need to speak up. We all have to speak up, because the louder we are and the more passionate we are about liberty, the more likely we are to bring it forth into our lives. So it's great to see that people are really resonating with your message. It's great that even through my show, people are starting to resonate.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the notes of optimism we need. You're absolutely right, especially for the critical thinkers out there that are aware of how dark and dire everything is. And I'm as aware as anybody. I'm horrified at the trajectory we're on. All that being said, though, we also have this countervailing force of the most unbelievable technological boom we've ever experienced in human history that gives us the capacity to have a future that is brighter than anything we can imagine, just as you described it. And if you can't find optimism in that, you're sleeping. Like, you're definitely taking too many black pills. Like, Bitcoin and basically any blockchain technology that allows for decentralized tech is, I mean, the greatest godsend potentially technologically we've ever had. And yes, it's a double-edged sword, and yes, they can use it for a totalitarian takeover of everything. So yes, I'm aware of all of that, but you still have to maintain the optimistic side that, like, yeah, it's really dark, and it could get really bad from here, but it could also lead towards a future that none of us envisioned, that we dreamt of only. And I think that we actually have a chance of that. And I know it sounds like, even though if you listen to my show, you'd probably be like, no way this guy thinks that. I do, though. I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't do my show. I would be, you know, a prepper full time. I would just be, I'd just be building bunkers and buying ammo and weaponry and food and everything else. And it's like, no, the reason I do my show is because I know that there's a hope, there's optimism to be had and to be found. And my audience brings that to me. You know, a lot of people thank me for doing my show. I thank them for listening, because the fact that I see my download numbers go up every month is truly inspirational. It's like, man, I am saying what I believe to be true, and people are resonating with it, and they're appreciative, and they're sharing it. Like, that tells me a lot, you know, especially when people share it. And some people will tell me, like, I have sent your show to every single person I know. Like, that's fucking crazy to me, you know? But long story short, don't let all of the reasonable reasons to be pessimistic outweigh the fact that, like, human liberty and that fire that burns within all of us is eternal. And that's my belief. Like, I believe that we yearn to be free. Even those that want to be enslaved right now, when they are enslaved fully, they will yearn to be free too. So there's optimism within a very dark prognosis that I just gave.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And like we've pretty much said the entire time, people are definitely hungry for it. And they're looking for this shepherd to lead the sheep, you know? And that sounds a little dumb, but people really are looking for that one person to just speak the truth, to wake up the remnant, as you said. And I think there's just so much opportunity for it. And when people are sharing your show, I think they look at you and they say, wow, well, what if I could do that? Because that was me, you know, 6 months ago, as I was watching all these podcasts. I'm like, man, I just want to get out there, and I really want to bring this forth to people. This is so important. And I've thought about it for years and years and years about doing something, because
me too. I thought about it for a decade before I did. So I feel you. Yeah.
So I you know, I've heard you talk about this a lot on your podcast too, and this is another reason why I admire you, is that people, you know, we need to bring better libertarians to the movement too, right? Like the guy who lives in his mom's basement, who his entire life is going to his local Libertarian Party meeting to be the treasurer for a county with 5 members that show up every day. It's like, all right, you know,
it's like, what do you know about being a treasurer when you haven't even paid a mortgage? You know,
right?
Like,
it's like,
what are you doing?
You're doing good work, and you should be happy about that. But look, like, why don't you get a girlfriend? Why don't you start a family? Why don't you get your own house? Like, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm a musician, right? Do you see all these posters back on my wall? There's shows I played.
Nice.
My band's gonna be putting out a CD here soon, our second CD. I'm an athlete. I'm a certified personal trainer. I just deadlifted 500 pounds. I'm a mechanic. My family's been in my business for years. You know, my fiance and I are getting married next year. I'm trying to stack up an impressive fucking resume, because I want to be that guy. You know, I don't want to just be a libertarian, right? Because nobody cares about the dude who's just a libertarian, right? Dave Smith is, you know, a comedian, right? And he's a podcaster, and he's a libertarian, right? People come to him from all these different angles. So when you have more,
and he's a father and a husband and a news pundit, you know, and he's got many things. Yes, absolutely.
So when you see these guys who have these impressive resumes, then you're like, wow, so they like checked off all the boxes. You know, these are the people we need to model. And it doesn't ring hollow, you know, when you have this guy who doesn't have his shit together, to go to the Jordan Peterson quote, you know, clean your room before you try to change the world. There's a lot of truth in that. People can brush it on the rug, but you know, you should have your shit together before you go trying to say, oh, well, this is how the economy should run, and you know, this is how the Federal Reserve should be. But you represent that. Dave represents that. Reed Coverdale represents that. All these guys that are coming forth with the Liberty Movement, I think, represent, you know, just complete people, and that's what we need to bring this message forth.
Yeah, well, and not just complete people, but also people that are interested in self-improvement and
Mhm.
working on getting better. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
like I don't want to listen to anybody who is content with where they're at. I want people that are evolving in their thinking, and they're, obviously I want someone who's very principled, but at the same time, like, I disagree with Dave sometimes. Like, I thought
Yeah.
that his take on the unleashing the police when it came to the Black Lives Matter riots, the way he phrased it concerned me. We've talked about it, and we've hashed it out, and I get his perspective now. But at the time, I was like, holy shit, dude! Like, as someone who's not a big fan of the police, I was like, whoa, what are you saying? So it's like, it's not that I want someone to be exactly ideologically pure with me. I want them to be evolving, but I want to see that they're thinking. And with a lot of people, you can't see that. It's like people will be mad at me if I change my opinion on something. Like, I've made my prediction early on, which probably launched my career, was that I thought that we were going to have a huge recession from the lockdowns right away. And at the time, I didn't expect them to print $7 trillion. So I was wrong in my prediction because I didn't think that they could do that. And they did. So then I started to predict inflation paired with a potential for a deflationary collapse. And I may be wrong on that too. But it's like, people know that I'm telling the truth, at least, whether or not I'm right or wrong, I'm telling the truth. So there's honesty paired with it. But then there's also, back to your point, it's like, I want someone who I can aspire to be. So
Absolutely.
if they are not doing shit with their life, I don't really care what you have to say. And I know that sounds rude, but
Yeah.
it's the truth. Like, if you're not practicing it, if you haven't improved your life with your belief system, maybe there's no merit to it. Like, you may have all the right ideas, but if you wake up every day and you eat shit and you don't work out and you don't produce anything for the world, it's like, what do I care what you have to say, man? Like, you got to live this shit. I lived this shit before I ever started talking about it.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm financially free is because I mean what I say. When I say I want to be free, financial freedom is part of that. And to be free when it comes to my health, you have to be in good shape. You have to have health to be free from medical tyranny too. It's like,
Mhm.
all of this is part of it. All of it is part of being a well-rounded person, as you described it. And absolutely, I mean, we need to bring in people like that. We need, and I know this may upset any female listeners, but we need strong men. Like, that's what we need right now, because we're in a very dark time. And we need strong women too. Don't get me wrong. Like, we absolutely do. But what we really, really need is strong fucking men. Like, we need strong men who are not going to take no for an answer, who are going to demand their liberty back and mean it when they say it, and mean it with their entire fucking being, and be willing to sacrifice everything for it. Because if we have enough that say that and mean it, we might not have to sacrifice ourselves. And that's my hope, because I don't want war. I'm a peaceful person. But if we can't get enough people that feel the way you and I do, that are willing to actually risk something and say it with their entire soul, we're going to have fucking dark times. So that's probably why I'm so fired up and inspired every time I hit record on my shows. Like, there's a level of urgency that comes with all this that I feel very deeply, and it's not performative. Like, I feel that we are on a ticking time bomb, and it's societal collapse at the end of that explosion. And no matter how financially free or in good shape I am or anything else, societal implosion is going to fucking affect everybody. So I'm doing everything in my power to not just make that the reality, but also bring in more voices that can do the same thing, because we need them desperately.
100%. And the note about masculinity, that is so very important, because we've seen over the last, 15 years with the rise of these crazy feminists, and it seems to kind of gone by the wayside recently. But, and this is going to upset some people, but, when you have this monstrous welfare state that pushes out fathers from their moral and financial obligation to be
Yep.
fathers and to be good men, it's terrible. And the results downstream of that are just absolutely horrid. I mean, even Obama talked about that. Obama said some of the stats on fatherless homes. I mean, it's horrible. But you're absolutely right, is that we need strong men who are not going to tolerate their liberties taken away, who are not going to tolerate this woke bullshit. Strong men who are going to stand up for what this country is meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
and
we need.
and not fake strong men like Donald Trump, who
Right.
talked about liberty
Absolutely.
and hesitantly allowed the entire country to get locked down under government or governor decree. Like, no, we need real strong men that, like, and say whatever you will about the negatives DeSantis, and there's plenty to say, But
Absolutely.
when he shifted from his very brief lockdowns in Florida back into like full blown, radical liberty mode, that dude was everything. And
Right.
like, I'm not saying I want him to be president because I think he'd be a disaster on foreign policy,
I
but I'm
agree.
saying
Yes.
we need a guy like that, a guy that is going to be willing to buck the trend, tell the truth, pay the price, get dragged mercilessly by the media, and not give a fuck. Like that's what I'm looking for. And I know Dave Smith's that guy. I know it for a fact. So, whether or not he can be president, I don't know. But regardless, I want a dude like that that's messaging for us. And I know Dave doesn't even want the job. So I don't know if he's going to do it or not. But if he does, he's going to do an amazing job at it. I think you will see that type of optimism and fire that you talked about with the Ron Paul revolution and the Trump campaigns. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times ahead.
Well, yeah, but speaking of Ron Paul as well, if you listen to the Rudy Giuliani moment, the moment that made Ron Paul for a lot of people, look at how he acted. He did not back down for a second in
Nope.
front of a debate stage that was booing him. Thousands of people. And I don't think the average person understands what that's like. Look, I've played probably well over 100 shows, and I played my band opened up for Steel Panther last year, right? Over
Uh,
1,000 people sold out. I don't think anybody understands unless they've been there what it's like to be in front of 1,000 people. Now just imagine every single one of those people pretty much giving you the finger and telling you that you suck. Ron Paul stood there and took it, and he kept going. He pushed the point because he knew that was the truth. That's the kind of energy that we need. That's the kind of energy that Dave has. That's what we need from men in this country, is that they're willing to stand up and say the unpopular things because they know it's true, and because
Yep.
they know it's not what people want to hear, but it's what they need to hear. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what Ron Paul represented back
Well,
then.
and consider that if not for that Ron Paul Rudy Giuliani moment, Dave Smith doesn't exist. That
Exactly.
he has said many times that he was a leftist
Mhm.
prior to witnessing that. And if not for Dave Smith going on Joe Rogan, I probably don't do my show. And God knows how many people have started a show because they listen to mine. It's like this butterfly effect is enormous, and people
Yes.
totally downplay it and they don't talk about it enough. And they say, oh, what did Ron Paul accomplish? Ron Paul accomplished a lot. He woke up millions of people, and those millions of people are going to wake up millions more. And Dave has the opportunity to wake up God knows how many millions more that will wake up God knows how many millions more, and blah, 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 blah. You get it. So, yeah, like whether or not he had he didn't stem the tide of totalitarianism in his lifetime, sure. But the fact that he was courageous in that moment, being booed, willing to say that, we own some of the culpability when it comes to getting attacked on 9/11.
Mhm.
That was important. That's an important message to get to the GOP, particularly because
Yes.
they're the ones that believe that the warfare state is sacrosanct and you can't talk bad about it. And he was like, fuck all that. I know the truth and I'm going to tell it. And he did. And he not only did he do it, but he shifted the audience in real time. He got boos and he turned them into cheers. You don't do that in modern American politics almost ever. And the reason you don't is because no one has the courage and no one tells the truth when it's unpopular. So I am super optimistic about Dave running because I know he will have many of those moments and he will tell it extremely honestly and fire back with vigor. And God, I almost said the wrong word there. I thought I was on talking for a second.
You're good. You're good. Yeah. But you know what? It's like they're ripe for the picking at this point because
Yep.
nobody trusts the mainstream news. Everybody goes to Joe Rogan to watch their
Yep.
podcast. Everybody's into alternative media now. Like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder are the biggest names on the right wing, and everybody listens to them. They're dog shit on a majority of issues, and they would
Yep.
suck Trump's dick if they told him to, pretty much.
Yep.
But you know what? The thing there is that Dave can get on Joe Rogan. He can talk to those kind of people, and he can slap the shit out of their logic like this, just like any of us could. And he can appeal to those people, and maybe that's what some of those people need, is to be metaphorically slapped. And then some of his listener, or some of their listenership hears that and says, maybe we aren't star spangly awesomeness, as Shane Hazel would say, right?
Right.
Maybe we did, entice some of this stuff that's coming to our shores now. So like I said, I just can't stop thinking about how how much opportunity there is here in the coming years, and especially done at a local level.
Oh
When
yeah.
you have people like us who get involved in their community and talk to people at a local level, then that's kind of how you generate that movement. Because what did Ron Paul do? He delivered thousands and thousands of babies, and then guess what? They all grew up and they said, "Hey, we like you, we respect you." He built capital with those people. They looked at him as a leader because he developed that capital and because he was competent, and they all voted him in. Well, we can all do that same thing, and I think that's happening here in Pennsylvania alone. There's over 150 elected libertarians. Granted, they're like smaller seats and stuff like that,
Sure.
but we don't know what that looks like a couple years down the line if this keeps growing and growing and growing. And once again, these are all people of their community. They went to their
Yep.
community. They had to get votes. The one guy out of my podcast, I want to say he's my age, so he's like 27, 28. He ran for mayor. He almost beat an incumbent, right? And this is a guy, once again, of his community. So what happens if we keep doing this? What happens if we keep playing this game? Could we
Yeah.
see a
But
libertarian in the White House?
oh yeah, no, we absolutely can. Like when I said I was pessimistic about Dave being president in
Yeah.
2024, it's just too soon.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, no, I
just,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, I just don't think that he can get that amount of a shift. We can't go from 2% to 40%. Like
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't see it. But I do think it's possible we go from 2 to 8. Like that's and if you ever pull 8 as a libertarian presidential candidate, it's like the duopoly is on notice. Like we're coming. We're not a fucking joke anymore. We're the real deal. And it could
We're
happen.
getting the Trump
It could
deal in
happen.
the mainstream media.
Yeah, it could absolutely happen. The next go around, it could be 20, and then the next go around, it could be 30 something, and you could really start to break the duopoly, and that's what we need. Like, granted, a lot of hardcore anarchists will be like, "Oh, so you want a triopoly? Like, who gives a fuck?" Well, it matters. It does matter that we have further options, and most importantly, that the duopoly doesn't feel like they are protected. Like at this point, they all know, because the American mentality is, well, if I don't vote for D or R, I'm throwing my vote away. Like that's what they think. And if you can ever get it to the point where that's not the way people think, yeah, shit can change really, really rapidly. And most importantly, we will have sway over the DNR candidates, because they'll know, like, if you don't listen to our demands, you're not going to fucking win. Like, and that's the problem with the Republican Party, is that for too long they have taken for granted the libertarian vote. And I think that that'll change. I think that they are going to have to run someone like DeSantis or whoever else that's super anti-lockdown to have any chance of libertarians voting for them. And that's powerful. So we'll see.
Well, you know what, to kind of tack on there, if you look at what Shane Hazel did, I really admire that. And a lot of people will poo-poo him, and he's probably the most hated dude from the GOP perspective. But let's think about that. He didn't campaign, he didn't spend any money, but he got 115,000 votes. Rand Paul, Mike Lee, you name the Republican pretty much, they were calling Shane to get him to endorse Purdue, right? That's
Huge.
what he got, like 2% of the vote. So now,
Right.
like you were saying earlier, imagine what happens if we get 8%. These guys are panicking. But you know what? That's a very, very powerful position, because you know what we could do? We could tell them, look, you better fucking fix your act up. You better do what we want, or else I will make sure you lose every time from here on out. You will never win another election again if you are not good on all these issues. So either
Exactly.
you fix your fucking act, or you lose every single time. And that's the way it's got to be, or else, look, get the fuck out of the way and let's get some real work done. And look, if you're a libertarian and you get elected and you flop every single time, get the fuck out of the way. And if there's a Republican who's better than you, he belongs there better than you. I have no party loyalty. I'm loyal to principles. I don't care about the Libertarian Party. I don't care about the Republican Party. I don't care about the Democrat Party.
Same.
Whoever
I
aligns
care
with
less.
whoever aligns with my values, who's going to get the stuff that I want done, you get my vote. It just so happens typically that's a Libertarian Party, but once again, if you're not going to be good on this stuff, get out of the way. There is no more, well, lesser of two evils, and let's just wait for them. Oh, well, only if we get our good guy in here. No, done. No more. And this is the way that every person, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, needs to be. We need to hold the people that we vote in, and we need to hold their feet to the flame. And that's the way it has to be going forward.
It has to. And I mean, we've seen what has happened because we didn't do that for too long. And we've also seen, I don't know if you're at all familiar with kind of internal libertarian politics, but Nick Sarwark was the chair, and he presided over the Gary Johnson and Joe Jorgensen campaigns, essentially. And because they increased in vote tallies, he took a big, victory lap. Like, look at me, I've fucking revolutionized libertarianism. And that's a problem. Like, when you put up candidates that aren't great, you shouldn't get record votes. Like, the libertarians should have withheld their votes, especially from actually from either of those campaigns. I think they were pretty comparable in their pluses and minuses. Neither were great. But my point in all this is to say that you have to let your party apparatus know that your vote is not a guarantee, and that includes the libertarians. So if they don't put up something, like if say Dave runs and he doesn't get the nomination, they put up someone else. I mean, if it was Spike Cohen, I'd probably support him still. But I'm saying if it was some lesser known, if it was Vermin Supreme or something, and God bless him, but no, thank you. I want a serious candidate that can actually revolutionize this party and give us an opportunity at real political power to stem the tide of totalitarianism. Like, that's what we're facing. It's not a fucking joke. We're not trying to like be the third party and get 5% of the vote for the rest of our existence. Like, no, I'm here to stop what's happening. That's what I'm here for. And if a Republican can do it, I will cast my vote in that direction. That's a fact. Now, I don't believe that most Republicans will do it, but if there's a meaningful threat from the Libertarian Party, you're exactly right. We can turn to them and say, and the ironic part is, all it would do would make them be better Republicans. It would make them better on Second Amendment and more interested in, diminishing the welfare state and more interested in diminishing the warfare state. Like, those are things that are extremely popular amongst the populist right-wing movement. So people want to paint us trying to use the Mises Caucus to create a more powerful libertarian party as a negative. It could actually be a tremendous positive for the Republican Party. And until they realize that and start to work with us as opposed to against us, I think they're making a mistake.
Right, I agree. And I think that's going to be a very, very big thing going forward for the Libertarian Party. And I don't think that we should look at it as a negative. Like you said, I think that we should appreciate it that when you have someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene basically pointing this dynamic out. And I kind of poo-pooed her tweets at first, but then after I read it again, I'm like, you know what? She's kind of saying what we're saying. She's like, look, you guys need to get your fucking act together. And she's right. I mean, she's probably dog shit on a lot of stuff, and I guarantee you she would have, cheered on Trump for all the stimulus spending. But you know what? This is kind of where I line up with Tho Bishop. I've had him on my show, and we talked about this, and he sold it to me pretty well. And once again, not that I agree with him 100% on everything, but there is something to be said for this populist right movement and the momentum of that. And if you have someone who's a good Austrian, paleo libertarian who's able to use that momentum and channel it towards, our goals, then I'm not upset. And this has been a point that I've thought about a lot recently. But, if the GOP libertarian guys win, then the libertarians win. If the libertarians win, then the GOP libertarians win, because we have the same goals. We just have different vehicles on planning how to get there. So I like the debates, and I'm planning to host one of those debates between Tho and Shane. But
Nice.
It doesn't have to be like this all out battle, because if you have two of these guys running in the same state, then they can battle it out on the stage and basically put the Democrat to shame. And then as soon as one of them falls off, or if it looks like one of the other's going to win, then you say, all right, well, you know what? You did good, man. You got my endorsement. Everybody that I can channel over to you, I'm going to channel over to you. And then at the end of the day, we have Ancapistan.
Well, yeah, that's down the road for sure. But I think that this is my biggest gripe with Tho, is that he continues to I understand his short-term motivation. I think he's making a terrible mistake long-term, though. The way he views it is that if we have a legitimate candidate like Dave running on the Mises Caucus and the LP ticket, it's going to diminish the chances of a better than usual Republican getting in. My point to him would be this: we cannot have better than usual. We need a fucking amazing GOP candidate. If you want political power, and I agree with him, political power is a political game, and you got to play political games, and you got to get your hands dirty, and blah, 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 blah. I understand all that. And I'm not even opposed to it at this point, because it's dire enough that I'm willing to set my principles aside as an ANCAP and just be like, yeah, I will get dirty. I will get in the mud and I will fucking play modern American politics.
So
to
you
try and...
will send police to the homeless people in the parks.
Yes, people got very mad at me about that.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
Listen, fuck them.
Yeah, I would prefer to have the police privatized, but in the meantime, with liability, I think it makes sense. Anyways, yeah. So my point in all this though is that I think that Tho is right. However, it behooves him to have a strong Mises Caucus LP ticket because it'll force the GOP to be that much more liberty oriented. It will force them to do that because if they don't, then we will not vote for them, and you will lose millions and millions of votes that would have otherwise gone to the GOP candidate because the vast majority of libertarians, in my opinion, are right leaning. Like they want to go away from whatever the fuck this is. And right now, that's the alternative option. So I think that we can work together. I don't think that we need to be at odds with one another. And I like Tho a lot. I've met him in person. We had drinks. He's a great guy, and he's whip smart. I mean, that dude is fucking smart, and he is a force to be reckoned with in the future. I just hope that we can find a way to work together as opposed to against each other, because I think if you combine our brain power, we're far better off than if we become each other's, antagonists.
Yeah, and Tho and I have talked quite a bit, but my problem with the GOP route is that as an auto mechanic, right? I've worked in dealerships now for almost 10 years, so I know the GOP base very, very well. Probably better than most guys who talk about it. And I'm not trying to bash anybody, but look, dude, my whole family's boomer cons, right? I live in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. There are Trump signs that are bigger than my fucking house still hanging out. I shit you not. Yeah. I know these people very, very well. I don't think they're quite as ready for the message of liberty as the GOP guys would think, because a lot of them would still tell you the vaccine was great. A lot of them, even at work, still ask you if you've been vaccinated. A lot of them said, my job should be shut down because COVID. Like, these guys ain't
and
quite
keep your hands off my Social Security, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the trade war with China or any other country.
And these guys would be the same ones that if Trump went out and said, "Hey, we're gonna go to war with Iran and China tomorrow," these guys would put their boots on and wait on the side of Route 28 in southwestern Pennsylvania, waiting for the bus to go pick them up so they could go start, World War III with Iran and China. I promise you.
You're absolutely right.
These guys literally think that China's going to come over here and take us over. They're clueless. And I'm not saying that to dog on them, but dude, that is the state. And there are literally people saying that there were no wars under Trump. So, and I swear to God, I just had this conversation last week. I'm not trying to rip on these people, but if you think they're going to be the ones to bring about the Ron Paul revolution, you may be a tad mistaken. And once again,
be disappointed.
I love all these guys dearly, but I just in my experience, I do not think that they're ready for liberty the same way that the Libertarian Party is. Now, you could say a lot of the Libertarian Party is junk, but look, I think it's a lot easier to purge the Libertarian Party than it is to purge the GOP. That's my opinion.
Oh no, that's a given. I mean, it's just obviously a given. The only thing that Tho does have a good point on this, that the average LP member is also not a great ally. I mean, and I think that's honestly true. I think
there's a lot less.
Well, not just that there's a lot less, but I think there's a lot of fucking weird people in the LP right now. And like, that's not to besmirch them on the whole. I'm part of it, so it's like, I'm not saying that. And it's gotten better. It's gotten a lot better, actually. I went to a meetup in San Diego like 15 years ago, and I'm telling you, I couldn't relate to these people at all. Like, they were just very strange to me. So I'm hopeful that we can revolutionize this thing from the ground up, and that's what's necessary. Like, it needs to be a really well-oiled, fine-tuned third party if it's going to have any political power whatsoever. And I'm okay with I hate using the term purge, but basically becoming so good on the things that we actually care about, that the people that care about the fringe shit just kind of go like, oh, this isn't my thing anymore, and they just go away. Because ultimately, if they're leading the charge on, a bunch of woke shit, it's just not what's important right now. Like if that's your focus, go be with the social justice people on the left. Like if that's really how you feel. I am very much interested in benefiting every person regardless of their skin color, class, creed, anything in America. And that's my goal. Is I want a party that does that. I don't want a party that's apologizing for my skin color and doing all sorts of weird shit like that. Like that's
Telling you
people
you
don't
have to be
like it.
actively anti-racist.
Yeah, people don't like it. People don't get it. They, in fact, those that do get it understand that it's fucking evil and it's Marxist at its very roots. So like on all fronts, like I want those people gone. I'm sorry. Like if you've swallowed that bullshit line about how, we're this deeply racist country that's irreparably harmed by the legacy of slavery, like I can't fuck with you, man. Like I need, like, that shit happened way before I was born, and I'm pretty old now. So what are we even talking about? Like let's move forward. Like how about criminal justice reform? That will help some black people. It'll also help some white people. But let's not focus on the skin color here. Let's just let's do the right thing. Let's do the liberty-minded thing. And I think that's the Mises Caucus path, really, is like they're just taking the Ron Paul movement and they're bringing it forward 12 years. Like that's all it is. So I'm very optimistic that if we can continue on that trend, God, things could be very different a couple of years from now, and it's coming. I mean, the Reno thing, I'm going to go and vote for Angela to make sure she gets her chair spot, and from there, I had her at my house and we talked for hours. She's amazing and brilliant and whip smart too. So like we've got some real wheelers and dealers to bring in here soon.
Nice. Yeah. Well, she's a total firebrand, and I absolutely love it. And she has a awesome taste in music. I see she's into all sorts of death metal, and she talked about Chuck Schuldiner the other day. And I mean, yeah, I could talk about that for hours and hours on end. But I think she will be the next chair of the party, and I think once she's there, it's going to be, hold the fuck on, because this party's really going to shake some shit up. And it may not be, what these woke libertarians want it to be, but it's going to be something. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I could not be more optimistic for the future.
Yeah.
Things are still going to hurt, but I think it can get a lot better.
Yeah. Oh, of course it could get a lot better. It's been really bad. So like, if it doesn't get better, I'm the fuck out of America. Like point blank, I'm out of here if it doesn't get better. But yeah, the thing is, like, at its core, libertarianism is anti-racism. I mean, because we don't want to judge people based off their skin color.
We reject collectivism.
People. Yeah, we're against collectivism, and as Ron Paul said, it's like the most deprived version of it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like if you think that that's the biggest problem in this country right now, I can't relate to you. Like I don't even know. I don't know how you're living. I don't know what you're going through. Like we are existing in a totalitarian dystopic nightmare. Like that's what we've had for the past 18 months. If you think racism is your number one priority to remedy, or that you think the government can fix it, I don't understand you at all. So those are the people that hate my guts, and they think that I'm a racist because I don't make it my priority. But it's just not the case. It's just that my priorities don't lie there. And I don't think that it's a political thing that can be remedied. I don't think that you change hearts and minds with political vehicles when it comes to whether or not they hate someone because they look different from them. I think it's fucking childish and nonsensical. And in fact, I think racism is propagated by the government more than anything. I mean, you look at what they're doing with the unvaccinated right now. It's like, this is an entirely new version of racism. It's you can't see it. It's not the skin color, but it's prejudicial and it's evil, and it's just as collectivist and nonsensical and insane as anything I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And I think that that should be your priority. And if you have to go into the statistics about how more Black people are unvaccinated, and that's why you want to make the vaccine passport not happen, okay, like if that's the reason, fine, do it. But at the root of it, I just want it to be beat down, because it's not a libertarian, it's not a liberty-oriented principle, and we have to fight it with every ounce of ourselves.
Right. It's essentially creates a caste system where you have a certain group of people who have rights and, basic liberties to do what they want to do, and another group that doesn't. I had a friend that literally tweeted out, oh, we should just let the unvaccinated die. And I was like, I can't believe I'm reading this. This dude's younger than me. He's like 25. And you're saying, oh, just let the unvaccinated die. First of all, the majority of people who didn't get the vaccine ain't going to die if they get COVID. Hello. My
I'd
fiance
say
and I
I'd
both
say
had.
like 99+% of them will not. Yeah.
Now, do the vaccines have some mild effect that may make it less likely you're going to end up in the hospital? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe
It's questionable at this point. I used to
it is.
say, look, people who are overweight, obese, older, unhealthy, whatever, they should probably go get vaccinated. But at this point now, I'm like, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't know either.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but to me, what I'm going to tell you is, hey, you should probably do the best you can to create more robust health through diet, exercise, and sleep. That's my opinion.
Yep.
The vaccine doesn't seem to offer that much protection. We know that being healthier will probably give you a little bit more protection, so you might as well go that route. Certainly, you're not going to hurt anything by trying to improve your health. The vaccine
No.
could hurt you. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it will, but I'm not
No,
saying
but
it won't either.
yeah, but it definitely could. I mean, I have some real skin in the game here. I have three parents: my mom and my dad and my stepdad who raised me,
Yeah.
and they're all boomers. The 61, 68, 68, and they're in the borderline risk category. Like north of 70 is where you actually get into real danger. But they're all in good shape. They're all healthy and active, and none of them have like real serious underlying health conditions. So I think that they're going to be okay. And they listen to my show. They talk to me about it, and I tell them like, look, do whatever you want. I'm definitely not going to tell you what to do, but please do it with your eyes open. That's all I ask. And don't do it because it gets mandated. If you oppose it fundamentally, stand on that principle and don't do it. If you want it, don't do it because it's mandated, but do it because you want to. And I think that that's fair advice. And I think that that's the important thing is like, even though I'm very, very anti-mandate, I'm not really an anti-vaxxer at its core. Like I'm not. This vaccine in particular, I'm very concerned with, and I think that there's a far higher danger prospect with it than anything that we've ever dealt with in the past. But even the things that we've dealt with in the past, some of them have been catastrophic. So if I think that this is potentially worse, yeah, I'm going to warn people about it. And I think I should have the right to warn people about it without being accused of being a fear-mongering Alex Jones conspiracy theorist. It's like, I'm just telling the truth. I'm reading a lot about this. I'm studying it. I'm researching it. I'm trying to figure it out because you're forcing it into every man, woman, and now child's body across the planet. It's a pretty fucking big deal. Like if you get it wrong, if this shit is dangerous and it starts to like make people drop dead all over the planet, that's hugely catastrophic. And you will have really violent revolutions because of it if people actually realize what's happened to them. So it's just like, man, I can't believe that this is a taboo subject that we can't talk about. Like it, especially when I'm not like up there, pushing some nonsense about it being nanoparticles magnetized and maybe all that's true. I don't fucking know. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying that stuff. Like, all I'm saying is there are some serious side effects that come with it. The efficacy is not as good as advertised. Like, mandating it is principally against everything I believe in, and that it shouldn't be mandated, and that it could very likely lead towards a passport system which allows for a totalitarian state to basically create a second-class citizenship and a caste system, as you described it, apartheid, medical apartheid. It's like, I should be able to talk about that. I should be able to talk about that. There's no conspiracy theory there. I'm just saying, like, this is what could come from that. Like, and they talk about it openly. There's countries across the planet that are doing it right now. It's like, I'm not picking this out of thin air and saying like, wow, what's happening? Like, no, I'm saying, like, look at Australia. Look at fucking Austria. Like, these are very serious dystopic things that are happening right now. And we're not allowed to talk about it. And I just think, like, as long as we're not allowed to talk about it, I'm gonna definitely talk about it at that point,
Well, you talked about Spike Cohen a little bit earlier, but he was one of the first people I interviewed for this podcast, and him and I talked about the vaccines. And it's funny, over in Israel and the countries that they have high vaccination rates, you know why they have such high vaccination rates? Because they didn't lie. They didn't mandate it. They just said, hey, it's there. We don't know how efficacious it is. Take it if you want it. If you don't, don't. And you know what?
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
That's what he said. Once again, I don't have the receipts. I believe him because I think Spike's legit, and I don't think
I'm sure
he
he's
would.
telling the truth.
Yeah. But there's something to that. If you don't lie to people, they trust you. Shocker. So,
well, not just if you don't lie, but also if you allow them to discuss it openly.
right.
Like it has made me so infinitely more skeptical of everything that's happening because I have to code everything I say on Twitter. And when I talk about the vaccine on my show, I have to say the V, and I have to like constantly try and circumvent these fucking censorship rules when all I'm trying to do is get to the truth. Like that's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in fucking like actually stopping people from getting the jab. Like I don't give a fuck if you want to. Like do whatever you want, but I want to know the danger prospects, especially when it comes to me and my family and my friends and my listening audience, like the people that want to know if they should be doing it or not. It's like if we can't talk about it, you have no excuse. I mean, it's human nature. You should be skeptical when someone tells you you can't talk about something. What do you want to do? Like same thing with the N-word. Like,
you want to press that button?
why do you think Tower Gang is successful? Because we're saying the things that you're not allowed to say.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this is just like, it's just fighting human nature. It's just bizarre that people are like, they not only do they accept it, but a lot of them cheer it on and they want it to be worse. And it's just like, man, the trajectory of things is so dark if we go down this path.
Yeah, and you create these fucking binary extremes where you have people literally saying, if you like so much as look at the vaccine, you're gonna die. And then you have other people literally like taking selfies, getting a needle in their fucking arm. It's like, can't we just have like, I hate to say this, but like normalcy? Like, you know, if somebody gets it, you say, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And then if somebody doesn't get it, you say, oh, well, that's cool. Instead,
right.
You literally have people saying, oh, you're gonna die. And then you have other people saying, you're gonna die if you don't get it. Like, why can we not just... Only the government, only the U.S. government could fuck this up so bad and literally divide everybody on this. That's essentially what they've done. Because, like I said, if they didn't make it so taboo and such a big deal and tell everybody that you're going to lose your job and we're going to coerce you basically to get this vaccine, then nobody would care. But it's the fact that they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. You know, if you get it, then you don't have to wear a mask. And then, oh, well, 2 weeks later, you have to wear a mask. And then, oh, well, COVID, you know, this protects you 90% from COVID. You're never going to get COVID. Then it's, oh, well, you got to get a booster. And then they tell you natural immunity doesn't work. It's like they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to do the Donald Trump. They want to be able to celebrate all their losses and wins. You know, well, basically, it's not real socialism.
Yes. Well, and then look at the other reasons for tremendous skepticism. They don't have any liability. The vaccine companies have no liability.
Exactly.
And they got funded for the research on it. And they're partnered with the US government. These are facts. Like that's a fucking truth right there. And we're not allowed to be like, hello? You funded a product, you fast-tracked it, you did it in record time. It's a totally new technology, and you want to force us all to get it. Excuse me. No. like and if it fucks me up, I can't sue anybody over it. Like, I mean, on all fronts, you just start to go like, okay, hold on. And the crazy thing is, if it weren't mandated, I wouldn't have ever known that. I wouldn't have ever known that the government had partnered with them in the creation of the vaccines. I wouldn't have known it because I wouldn't have cared. Because if it wasn't mandated, I would have just been like, well, I'm not going to take it. And anyone that wants to take it, they can take it. I don't give a shit. And that would have been the end of it. And I would have gone back to talking about lockdowns or whatever else. But they did. So now I am obligated to go, what the fuck is happening? And I don't know how people don't ask these questions. It's just, they seem so obvious to me.
Nice, man. Well, we've been going for quite a little bit here. In your everyday life, does it seem like people are kind of on the same page as you and that they share our optimism?
I wouldn't say people share our optimism, but in real life, most people I encounter, they're not mask zealots, but granted, I'm in Florida now. When I was in San Diego, I would say it was about 50-50. You know, people were either afraid and at home, and I didn't really see those people, so I didn't interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I played beach volleyball for a long time, and all of those people came back out like as soon as they could, because for a while they locked down the beaches, and we were all high-fiving. No one wore a mask. No one even asked about anything. A few people got COVID over the year time frame I was still there, and no one gave a shit, and everyone was healthy, and it was no big deal. So I think that it's a mixed bag. And those people, the people that are like actually enjoying their lives and living freely, they still maintain a level of optimism about everything because, well, they're getting sun and exercise, and they probably just feel better than the people that are scared to death and at home.
Absolutely.
But this is my concern, is that there are a huge percentage of this country that are genuinely terrorized by this. And we haven't really seen the repercussions there. So I don't know. I think that I'm optimistic because the people that are pushing back against this are the healthy, fit, educated, critical thinkers. And I think that those are the people that will ultimately win the day. But at this point, the levers of power that are wielded by the government are controlled by the fearful and the deranged, in my opinion. So it's a fight, it's a battle, it's an important one. It's the most important one I've ever lived through for sure. But I'm optimistic. I think that really we have the truth on our side. We have all of the merit, if there is such a thing as meritocracy left in this country. I think that we'll win the day. So stay
Nice.
tuned.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. And just to kind of tap on there, it's very sad, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but it's very sad when you see children outside by themselves wearing a mask because, and someone argued with me, oh, well, it's just a mask. Well, it's not about the mask. It's the fact that you indoctrinated children to think that they're a walking threat to everybody. That is abhorrent. I don't care who did it, but you deserve to be pushed out in the public. I'm not going to finish that, but
Yeah, yeah.
you
Well,
deserve the worst for harming the children. The adults, I agree. You should still, there's a lot of blame there, but like, look, when you harm children, these people, they don't have a choice in all this. They don't have a voice. We have to speak up for them. So when I see them being abused, there's nothing that infuriates me more because I plan to have a family. I plan to be a father one day.
of course.
And if you ever teach my child that they're a walking threat just for existing, I won't get this video pulled, but I'm sure I'll leave that one to the imagination.
No, I mean your point's well taken, and this is why I had James Lindsay on last week. Is like, it's not just the propaganda when it comes to the vaccine and masking and everything else, COVID hysteria, that's concerning. Critical race theory, your child will be taught that it's a threat because of how it was born. Like that's really what's happening. It's not just some right-wing conspiracy mongering nonsense. Like, it really is happening, and that's why it has to be defeated on all fronts. This fear mongering, collectivization, racism, which is what it is, has to be beat down. And your point about the children is exactly why I take this so seriously. Is like, they're going to be our future, like it or not, and they are not being able to see smiling faces. They're not being able to socialize with friends. I can't even imagine what the autism rates are, but I'd imagine they're skyrocketing because there's just so limited interaction for these children. And then also, even if they're not really on the spectrum, but just like emotionally stunted, developmentally stunted, and all across the board, not to mention the trauma that they're experiencing. We're going to pay a price for a generation because of this. And this is why I fight tooth and nail every fucking day to try and end it and to try and make it so that it can never happen again, because what they did to these kids, sacrificing the young for the old, is unforgivable. And I think that anybody that has a heart, that has a brain, knows it. If they aren't completely self-centered, that aren't just focused on their own survival, you have to understand that you are taking a trade-off that is catastrophic. And I'm grateful that so many people are starting to see the light on this. Let's just pray that the damage done already isn't so catastrophic we can't get over it.
Absolutely. I'm very much so hopeful that we can kind of course correct, because there's nothing more tragic. Yeah, there's nothing more tragic than sacrificing any people at all, but especially the ones who are going to shape shape this country for years to come. And that's
let's real optimistic note. Those kids may become really radicalized anti-status because of it, because they were like, as they grow up and they hit their teen years and they realize, like, why am I dysfunctional? Like, why is the generation older than me killing it and I'm all messed up? And it's like, maybe if we are able to message to them in a way that actually reaches them, they can realize, like, it's the state, it's the lockdowns, it's all this insanity that happened to me when I was a child, and they might become very radical libertarian types. That's, maybe I'm being too hopeful, but I think there's a chance.
No, dude, I think you're absolutely right, and this is why I am such an advocate for men and stronger fathers, because we can breed this kind of ideology into families. And that sounds kind of eugenicist, if you will, But really, what other option do we have than to raise people on these values? Because this is the most beautiful political philosophy that there is out there. It's consistent and it's very easy for anybody to understand. I know you're a big fan of Austrian economics, as am I, and we didn't even talk about that. But it's to me that's always been the most intuitive form of economics. But that being said, if we teach our children these values now, then who knows what this country will look like in 20 years. Granted, there's probably going to be a collapse, but what if when we start things over, we have all this technology and we have just a huge population of libertarians that love Austrian economics and understand this beautiful philosophy? Dude, we have no idea how excellent things can get. It would be like the founding of this country all over again, except for with the technology that we have today.
And fundamental libertarian ideology, which, while we obviously stole a lot of that from the American Revolution and the founding fathers, it also added to it. We have the Austrian economics thing, which they didn't really have back then. They were more conservative and they certainly didn't want to have a big government, and that's Austrian in its own right. But there we have evolved past their thinking too. And if we can implement the best of what they had with the best of what we have, you're absolutely right. I mean, it could be a very bright future, God willing.
Absolutely. And, I think your show, hopefully my show, Reed's show, Dave's show, all the other great guys doing great work out there right now. Hopefully everyone hears this for years to come, and hopefully they feel inspired to do the work that we're doing and,
Yep.
Do work that's maybe better than ours or, whatever, and
Exactly.
put this message out forward. So
We
we've been
have
going.
no idea. We have no idea who the butterfly effect will be that listens to this right now, and they could start their own show or their own movement or their own political campaign and be the catalyst for some real change in this country. And that's why I think that's why you and I do what we do, is like that. I believe that there is reason for hope and optimism, and I hope that people are inspired. I hope that people go out and they actually make change, because God, do we need it.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, I think that's the reason why we do what we do. And hopefully someone hears this. And, if you are listening right now, reach out to us, tell us you feel inspired, and we'll do what we can to raise you up and help you get out there. Because who knows, maybe that person will be the next Ron Paul, or maybe it'll just be the next person that, history tells about for years to come.
Exactly.
So I couldn't
Be the
think of a
next
better.
Dave Smith.
Right, right. I couldn't think of a better note to end it on, man. Go ahead, plug your stuff. We'll get rocking and rolling.
Cool. At Liberty Lock Pod on Twitter, Liberty Lockdown on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere else. So just search for Liberty Lockdown. I am Clint Russell. You can also find me on Tower Gang Power Hour if you want to see my more humorous shit talking side. But if you want more of the fiery Liberty side, go check out Liberty Lockdown. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, and thank you for coming on. All right, everybody, this was In Liberty and Health. Thanks, everybody.